The writer Annie Dillard wrote poetically in an essay about the idea of stones speaking. The Native Americans often talk about a nature that can speak to us. And so today, December 29th, 2019, we're going to look at some stones here at end of Geology Creek in Gillespie County, Texas. And we're going to see what they can teach us, if they can talk to us. Nikola Tesla said that crystals are living beings. And in the consciousness raising community, there is talk more and more about crystals as harbors for information from the past, and of the possibility that we might be able to access this information, these records. Then we must ask ourselves, what do crystals know? Well, the ancients terraformed the earth, the continents, with crystalline material. What do the continents know? Let's see if we can find out what some of the terraformed crystalline material that the ancients laid down in sections in the distant past can tell us. This creek shows us clearly that it is a terraformed object, an artificial object, not a natural object. Now we're just going to look at these seams in artificial concrete, and we're just going to go to the left, okay, a bit. We're going to measure this later. We're just doing a rough walkabout now to another set of seams, okay? Then we're just going to go over here to the next set of seams. Interesting, they come in twos, or in this case, threes. You can see 3 seams there. So we have the larger sections, and then the smaller sections. And there, we're going to go to the next one. Okay, here's the next one. This goes all the way through the material. Vertical seams. The ancients weren't precious about their right angles, but they do have vertical sectioning, which is to say vertical seam sectioning left to right as they build across the planet. And you see evidence of where they stopped their left to right building. Here's a seam here. Goes all the way through. All right. And we'll find another seam there, another seam there. I'm going to use a yardstick to measure just how far it is from section to section. And we're going to see if numbers can speak to us. Which is to say, we're going to see if the ancients can speak to us in the language of mathematics. So that's 3 feet there. That's 6 feet, 9 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, and measuring to the interior seam, we have 18 feet minus 1 inch. The next smaller section, 4 3/4 inches, 4.5 inches, 4.5 inches. 6 feet, 9 feet, 9 feet 5 inches, to the interior seam. And this small section, 18 inches. And then we have an invisible small section. It becomes visible up here, 10.5 inches. So we could take 10.5 inches off of the previous measurement for the interior seam, but it does become invisible down here. So 3 feet, 3 feet, so that's 6 plus 3 is 9 feet, 12 feet, 12 feet, 29.25 inches to the interior seam. 6 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches, 7.25, 12 inches for that little section. Okay, let's start at this interior seam. Okay, it becomes invisible down here. That's the exterior seam to this section. So there's 2 seams, right? Let's start at this interior seam to this left section, this left-hand section. So we have 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, 18 feet, 18 feet, 18 feet 2 inches to the next seam. So we just measured this really wide section starting from that tuft of grass. It goes all the way here to this little tuft of grass, right? This seam. And that's the 18-foot 2-inch one. Now we're gonna again measure the next section. So that was 3. This is 6. This is 6 feet. That's going to be 9 feet to right there. Okay, so this is going to be 12 feet. Okay, 12 feet 8 inches to this next seam. The ancients weren't precious about their right angles. These are not Romans. So the measurements cannot be perfect because the right angles are not perfect, okay? Let's do the next one. We're going to just do our best and see if we can get a pattern. We're starting at 3 feet, and this is going to be 6 feet to the interior seam, because there are 3 seams here, as you can see. 6 feet, 3 inches. Okay. Then we've got a section that starts out at 11.5 inches. Narrows, narrows, narrows. There it's 3 inches. 1 3/16. So it's fairly irregular all the way up. We do see this flat. We do see this flat side, which tells us that it is a seam and not fracturing. So we know that's building. All right, then we've got this 3rd seam on the left of those 2. And that 3rd seam, 6.5, starts out 7.5. 9. It widens significantly. 12.5. 14.25. Okay, we've got another seam here, which is only 30 inches wide. Again, not perfectly straight, not Roman right angle. but vertical seams. See it there? And then it continues there. Flat side to it. Right? So we know it's construction. So that's one seam that comes through irregularly but vertically, echoing these vertical seams that go through slightly irregularly but vertically. And we can see it, we can see the flat side, right? And we can see the seam going through the entire, and it splits into two seams right there. So then from that seam to the left, let's measure to the next artificial seam. All right, so we'll start up here. That's the final seam. And again, we find our flat side. Okay. Flat side that tells us this artificial building. Wider view on those seams. We'll just go in real quick just to show you. That was that one seam, right? That's the far left seam in this bank that's been exposed. Next seam, right there. Next two seams together, right there, and the third one appearing next to that. So there's three seams together. Three seams, 1, 2, 3. Single seam. Single seam with the tuft of grass here. Slight fracturing. See, that's what a fracture looks like. That's in really, really thin material. See? I could break that off with my ruler right now. That's what fracturing looks like. That's actual fracturing. You almost never see that, but you see there's a thinness to the material that's allowed it to fracture. Okay, so watch this. So because it's that thin, it can fracture. So that's a fracture line, not a seam line. There's no seam. The actual seam that they made is at the next tuft of grass. Two seams, widening, widening, and you see, as always, the flat side. The flat side as we go up. Okay. Flat side as we go up. Flat side as we go up. Toward the next tuft of grass, right? Here's that tuft of grass, and there's two seams together that rise up. And again we see the flat side. flat side. Flat side, right? Next one, double seam. Oops. Flat side. Double seam. Constructed area. Constructed. So that's the last seam that we measured from. And then we have more dramatic building down there. Then the next question is, how old is this material? How old are these layers that compose the creek bank here at end of Geology Creek? There seems to have been erosion, as you can see, smoothness to the softer layers, right? But then we come here and we don't feel that this has been eroded. There's still a roughness, a knobbiness. Here's another seam, right here. Let's go measure this constructed section, left to right. So here was our last interior seam, interior meaning the interior of the next section we're measuring. So we're going to just go 3 feet, right? 6 feet, 9 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, plus 8 inches. 15 feet, 8 inches to that dramatic seam there, right? So although the ancients don't use perfect right angle seams, many of their seams do end up being quite straight. Let's just have a look at this one. All right, so as the light leaves Terra for another day, we're going to head home and add up these numbers, compare the numbers, and see what we have here at end of Geology Creek. This has been Jock Doubleday reporting from Gillespie County in central Texas, where an advanced ancient race or races terraformed endless miles of creek beds, riverbeds. They created crystalline domes made out of what we call granite, but which is actually pink crystalline concrete. They created pyramids here. Check out my article, Utopia Pyramid Complex. Out of concrete. They created that pyramid out of concrete. It's stepped concrete, concretized gypsum, just like this stuff, which the orthodoxy would call naturally concretized, right, over time, but which is in fact artificial concrete, a magic recipe that the ancients mixed and heated and laid down to tell us something, to give us something, to give us an earth full of rivers and creeks and hills. And undoubtedly mountains. We have evidence now that Kailash was built. If Kailash was built, what else was built? If hundreds of square miles of Texas was built, what else is built? This is Jock Doubleday reporting from Central Texas here in Gillespie County. Inside a little creek called End of Geology Creek. A creek not large enough for anyone to bother to have named it. And so now it has been named. It's appropriate name because institutional geology ends with this creek. I hope you all have a scientific day.